And you want me to let folks in?
Yeah, that would be great. We said 2:30, but we can give them a couple of extra minutes.
Okay. Yeah, folks coming in. Mina, do you want to get us rolling, maybe?
Yes. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Herminia Cervantes. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We definitely have a treat for everyone. One of the questions that we always get asked from both site grantees, district folks, even at other county offices of education is we have all of these initiatives, we have all of these projects, we have MTSS, we have community engagement, we have CYBHI, we have all of these programs that are kind of part of our school system. How do they all fit together? So today's theme is going to be really talking about initiatives and how they support the community schools work. We're really, really excited for you to make the time to join us today. We are gonna wait maybe just a couple more minutes, and then we'll hand it over to Matt, just so he can introduce our guest speakers for today.
All right. All right. And as we're waiting, I would encourage you to pin both Christine and Stephen and myself if you want, but they'll be doing much of the talking or most of the talking, at least on the front end. That'll help kind of keep our guests front and center. Give people just another minute. All right. I think we're ready to get ready to roll. Very good. Thank you. And I appreciate people taking the time, especially in this crazy time of year. I'm confident everything is just, sunshine and flowers everywhere in all that you do. Saying that with uh, tongue in cheek. We know that this is a crazy time of year. Finishing strong and beginning to build and plan for next year is always a challenge. So thank you for being here. And we also know that this is being recorded. So we've already hit the record button. So just know that it is being recorded for those that aren't able to make it. As you know, I'm Matt Kwon from Inflection. I am a partner in crime with Manuel Colon. And Manuel is not with us today as he is down in the southern part of your region doing some work with folks on the south part of the Central Coast. I'm very excited today to have two colleagues who've been doing amazing work in the state for years, Christine Olmstead and Stephen Sterling Mitchell, who have been instrumental in some really, really, really critical work that, when layered together with the community schools model and the community schools work that you're all engaged in, um, has the potential to leverage all kinds of opportunities for kids and, most importantly, outcomes. We're going to dive in real quick, and we're going to take advantage of their expertise and Christine, I'm going to start with you because I think you're time bound in terms of between now and 3. Stephen, are you okay at the 3 o'clock at plugging in and picking up?
Sure am.
That works perfect. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So what I want to do is just very quickly, I'm going to talk to Christine, and we'll come back to this page here in a second. I want to just remind you all that in your work with us and specifically with Manuel over the last 2 years, we've really focused on a systemic approach to implementing community schools. And specifically, we laid out in kind of the 5 steps the different component parts. And you can see it kind of mapped across the top in terms of collaborative leadership, family, community partnership. You can read those, you know those, the 4 pillars. And then we identify those component parts that we've been working with you and at the county, at the regional county district and site levels with. What we want to do today is we want to capture the essence essentially of how multiple statewide initiatives, specifically 2 that have been longstanding. Christine will be talking a little bit about California MTSS. Stephen will be talking about the Community Engagement Initiative, CEI. But we're going to start actually with Christine talking about something that she's been shepherding over the last several months, which is the state profile of a learner/graduate. And when we look at that and we think of it, I'm just using these as 4 examples. There are 4 different schools that have some variation of what I think would fit under the new state, the law that's coming in terms of having a graduate portrait. You see Ocean View High School, which is down in Southern California, Wheatland up by Sacramento. We create, we build, we share. Actually, it's Livingston High School in the Central Valley up near Merced. And then Rise Up is actually Paradise High School from up in Chico County. And so, Christine, we're going to start with taking a look at where in what ways does the graduate portrait and talk a little bit about the work that's coming, because there may be some that are like, oh gosh, this is really happening. Talk about the role it plays, both within the community schools framing, certainly with MTSS, which you'll touch on here in a second. So if you could just talk a little bit about the portrait.
Yeah, so the state board is currently working on adopting what is most likely going to be named based on community feedback is what is going to be known as a portrait of a learner. And it will not be a mandate for any local district to adopt their own local portrait. Thousands of districts across the state of California have already adopted local portraits. This one is specifically going to be for the state board to use to guide their own policy decisions, and the California Department of Education to be using to guide accountability decisions as we look at changes to the state dashboard. And so that's really what it's being used for, as a North Star. You'll see if you already have a portrait of a learner, portrait of a graduate profile, whatever you call them locally, that many of the elements that you'll see in the states will mirror what you already have in your own. Things that surface through community engagement feedback over 2 months was critical thinking, perseverance, multilingualism came out strong. So you will see in our portrait one specific to multilingualism. Community engagement, community and civic engagement, you'll see will likely come out. This Friday, the state board is supposed to be posting a memo with kind of the draft direction that they're going. And potentially in May or as late as July, will officially adopt the portrait of a learner for the state of California. From there, of course, progressions will be made, accountability decisions will be used to guide from there. But it will not be a mandate locally, so you all can be rest assured that there's nothing coming down to you in that direction. But they are good to start developing a shared vision in your own local community. So if you don't have one, it is something to start as you look at just this slide here that Matt has up on shared identity, shared purpose, and vision for readiness. Engaging in creating a portrait of a learner for your local community is a really good way to start this shared identity, shared purpose, and vision for readiness work. And I'm sorry, I have to tap Stephen, because I think the Community Engagement Initiative does a really bang up job of building shared identity, shared purpose, vision, and readiness. So Stephen, if you just want to really quickly touch on what you all do there, I can't pass up that opportunity. Sorry, Matt.
No, it's perfect.
Sure. And so, hello, Central Coast folks. I see some old friends. Shout out to my partner in crime from Pajaro Valley. We did amazing work with them. And so, really, the idea of shared identity, the community schools work, and many of the initiatives are around shared leadership, shared decision making. And so, that involves bringing to the table folks who historically haven't been at the table to help make decisions. And one of the things when I share later about CEI, we'll talk about the educational partners that come to the table and help drive the work in local communities.
Thanks,
Christine,
Stephen.
can I just put a quick little plug in? There's a reason for these are part of steps 1 and 2. That when I say these, collaborative leadership, family community partnerships, specifically shared identity, shared purpose, vision for readiness. I love the fact that you're shouting Stephen out, because this is co-created. I may have used this. There's a teacher at some work we're doing in Southern California who on a leadership team said, the community owns the building, we rent rooms. And it's that mindset around, but it's foundational. Manuel would tell you it's foundational. That's why we put it in steps 1 and 2. That this work is really what you need to do to set the anchors to actually build the system that's going to serve the community and serve all kids well. So thank you, Christine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, as we look at the California MTSS framework too, and you go through the training on that very similarly to the work you do with community schools or even the Community Engagement Initiative, it starts with, what is our vision? What is our vision for all? When we say all means all, we always ask the question, who are we leaving out? Because typically when we say all, we haven't designed for the margins, we've designed for the center. And so when we talk about all, we talk about designing for the margins. Who have we designed our most marginalized for? And does our system provide those supports that we're looking for? And that has to come out of our shared identity and shared vision of readiness. And we have to do that collectively, I think, both internally as a staff, but externally with our community too.
Look at you just transitioning right into to MTSS and get ready to go deep, because she laid the groundwork in California 8 or 9 years ago for this work to take root. So roll with it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely crosswalks directly with the 4 pillars of community schools. I think, the difference in the MTSS framework, 4 pillars that support the whole child domain, that when you break out the whole child domain for California MTSS, those of you who are familiar with it, and if you're not familiar with it, it's very easy. The whole child domain asks, how do we support academics? How do we support behavior? And how do we support social emotional learning and mental health? That's one domain, and 4 supporting domains under that are shared leadership or collaborative leadership. And that's leadership between district to site, site to staff, staff to community. So you're looking at that whole kind of engagement throughout your system. So whole system engagement where you're looking at those leadership practices. Family and community partnerships is also a domain within California MTSS. But family and community partnerships also in California MTSS includes expanded and enhanced learning time. And so that's how the 2 kind of 4 pillars differ a little bit, because in the California MTSS framework, we also pull out a pillar called policies and practices. And we look at those policies and practices that are creating barriers for students, especially our most marginalized students, to access the supports that they need. Where I know in the community schools pillars, that's talked about through collaborative leadership and practices, and that you are definitely interrogating the system and looking at what are those barriers for student learning and students to be able to get the supports they need. Integrated supports work the same. How are we ensuring that the way we're designing our system, we're pulling in expanded learning opportunities, we're pulling in our community partners, we're pulling in our families, and we're actually all designing with our students as the center and with the outcome of college and career readiness. And so as long as we're all moving in that same direction with students at the center, how do we make sure our most marginalized students are also prepared for college and career, not just the ones that will get it because they showed up to school, right? But who are the ones that actually need our supports as a school system? And then, of course, that expanded and enhanced learning time. We have to make sure that school is extended and that school is a safe place for our students to come to from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or however late we'll leave our doors open. At secondary, I know we leave our doors open till 9, 10, 11, 12 at night. So all of that matters when we talk about expanded and enhanced learning. Whether you use the lever of community schools and the community schools pillars to organize your system, or you use the lever of California MTSS to organize your system, or you use CEI to organize your system, it doesn't matter how you organize your system. You just have to use a framework to organize your system and make sure that anything then you layer in is an additive, and you know how to move that lever when needed and how to push when needed based on which context you're trying to move.
And Christina, if you could talk just for a few minutes, because again, everybody in the Central Coast has been working with the approach that we developed initially with California MTSS. And so, when you talk about equitable access, for example, when you're talking about integrated supports in the context of kids getting what they need, when and how they need it, say, a tier 2, a tier 3, that equitable access for individual, actually, much of that language came from the California MTSS work. Same with universal practices. As a former secondary, large comprehensive high school principal, large middle school principal, the concept of universal, right? RTI is all we ever knew because somebody else needed to fix what wasn't right. And that universal piece in terms of universal practices, again, language that was co-developed really from an MTSS perspective 6-7 years ago. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about the design process that went into the development of some of the implementation tools within California MTSS and just kind of the different people, Butte County, et cetera, that you brought together?
Sure. Definitely Butte County Office of Education. Part of when we, as Orange County Department of Ed, originally applied for the original $10 million, that's now $90 million investment in the state, was the requirement in that grant application was to partner between a county office who had large urban suburban experience with a rural county office. And so we reached out to our partners at Butte County office. They had done a lot of work in migrant education that we were familiar with, as well as their work around small and rural school districts. And so from there, if you're part of the Rural Ed Network, that stemmed out of California MTSS work as well. But when we talk about universal and you think about universally designing for an entire state, we really had to start with that approach. Our state is so incredibly diverse. And so when we talk about universal design for learning and who are we designing for, we looked at all of the accountability indicators that we're supposed to be designing for and looked at who are students who are being left out the most. And so when we talk about universal practices, we're talking about all of those good pedagogical practices that we know all students need. And so whether it's you're thinking about designing a lesson for one of your English language learners, those strategies you use for English language learners are good for all kids, so they should be universally applied. So when we talk about universal, we talk about those practices and pedagogical moves that are just good for all kids. Turn and talk. It's not just an EL strategy, it's good for all kids. Like a lot of these things that we've designed to help certain groups of students should just be used day to day in all of our classrooms to help all students access. But also when we talk about universally designing, we're not just talking about the lesson in and of itself, we're talking about the way all students can access that lesson. So we have to think about how students can show competency in what they're supposed to be learning based on a state standard, and be able to have kids demonstrate in a manner that they know how to. And if we see that 85% of our students aren't understanding a lesson, we can't blame the students. We have to blame the lesson design. And we have to be honest with ourselves about lesson design and intentionality about lesson design. And I think that's where, when we talk about California MTSS and we talk about tiers and continuums of support and things like that, we have to first start about talking about the whole child domain, and whatever we're doing, how is this what we're doing supporting behavior, academics, and social emotional and mental health for students? And if it's not, what supports do we need in order for that to happen? And that's how we universally design and universally plan.
Very good. So let me ask you this, Christine, because I know your time's run a little bit short. As you think about, I mean, you alluded to this, it's like choose a framework, but as you think about, your experience, certainly at the county level, your experience at the district level, as an assistant superintendent, in Vista and the district level you did prior to going to Orange County, what role do you play and kind of what tips might you give to folks in terms of this idea of learning to layer these things on top of each other? I mean, the overwhelmed nature that the sites often feel in terms of, oh, it's another initiative, it's another initiative, it's another initiative. What are some tips and tricks that you might suggest for how you at the district level can help layer things for folks at the site level?
You have to uncomplicate things for them. So you have to use some type of organizing framework. So when you start to layer something else, so say I'm already doing MTSS, and then I have an opportunity to apply for CEI, right? I have to make a conscious choice as a school principal. Do I have the bandwidth to apply for CEI? Sometimes we apply because we're told to, and now I have to figure out my bandwidth, right? So a lot of times what I do is I just start with, what is this organizing framework I'm using? So if it's community schools, I'm going to use community schools. Well, then I have to ask, how is CEI going to help enhance and move forward something that's stuck within my community schools effort right now? And how am I going to leverage this investment I'm going to make in CEI to move something that's stuck? And when I say something that's stuck, I always think about it in this little thing I call the ABCs of efficacy, where it's stuck because A, we either didn't make sure everybody had the ability to do what we're asking them to do. It's stuck because we didn't build the belief that people actually wanted to get behind this thing we were asking people to do. Or it's stuck because we didn't provide the capacity to actually train our teachers well to do what we're asking them to do, or train our principals well to do what we're asking them to do. We didn't give them the time, we didn't give them the space, we didn't give them the cognitive environment for them to wrestle with some of these concepts we're asking about. And so if we never built the collective efficacy around what we're trying to do, we are never going to get momentum on anything we're trying to do. So we really need to stop and think about, did we actually build the skills for whatever educator group we're trying to move to actually do what we're asking them to do? And it's the same thing. We sometimes ask students to do things that they're not ready to do. And we haven't built the time and space that they need in order to do that. So a lot of times I just say, let's pause for a minute and really think about what we're doing to our system before we do that next thing. Because you want to leverage something you're adding. You don't want to layer, because then you create stress and fatigue.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I know you've got to run.
I have a few minutes, so
Yeah,
I'm good. I told the other group I might be a few minutes late. So if there's questions or anything else you want to ask, I'm good for a few minutes.
Yeah. So if you've got a question for Christine, just go ahead and unmute and ask away.
Christine, what was the A of that ABC? I got the B and the C. Just
Ability.
because it was very well. Ability. Thank
Ability.
you.
Yeah, and I think of it a lot of times, especially K-8, when we're like adopting new curriculum. Sometimes we'll ask teachers to go to one day of professional development and then send them home with all their new teachers' manuals for the summer and expect them to learn it. And it's completely like the shift in pedagogy that's actually written into the curriculum that we bought that nobody studied or trained on.
Thank you.
To give you an example for some schools going through some redesign, some secondary schools. One of the key elements of secondary school redesign is this idea of teacher collaboration. And want to think about a district, or excuse me, a junior high, Sycamore Junior High down in Anaheim. Their design team basically said, "Hey, look, we've never really been asked nor been trained to actually collaborate. We've been in our silos, for years and years and years. So that throwing that in as another example of ability, and really needing to develop that muscle to be able to do that well. I'm never good with wait time. Not gonna lie, had issues with that all my life. Christine, I'm going to trust that I can say this and tell me if I'm wrong publicly. That she is absolutely 100,000% committed to serving every kid well, and just deep level of knowledge around MTSS. I'm confident that if you've got a burning question, if you're stuck and you're like, okay, yeah, this just scratched the surface, we can get you connected with Christine. And I know her well enough to know that she'll go to the nth degree to get you what you need. Is that a legit statement?
That is a legit statement. And if I don't know it, I'll ask Stephen.
Yep, there you go. All right.
I put my email in chat. Feel free to reach out. Happy to answer anything for anybody.
Appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you,
All
Christine.
right. Thank you. See you later.
Stephen, I'm going to do a quick little intro, and I'm going to share the screens. And I know you've got a subset of slides. And Stephen, as we get into your presentation, just give me the high sign, and I will advance the slides. But I want to start with this visual. This is actually a picture of Anaheim High School. My father actually graduated from Anaheim High back in 1957. And I got to be there on a day. And Stephen, I think this may have been on the front end. I think they were one of the first 4 districts in the CEI work, and I'll let you speak to that. But this was an amazing day with about 400 people at about, I don't know how many tables, probably 60 tables or 50 tables, where they had 8 people around. They had students, they had staff, they had family and parents, family, they had community members, all engaging in a visioning process to set the identity and the shared vision for readiness, so the shared purpose of the school. And so what I would do is invite Stephen to take it away in relationship to CEI and the interconnections, the natural connections, but the powerful connections with community schools approach.
All right, thank you, Matt, and hello, Central Coast. Once again, Matt, yeah, Anaheim Union High School District was one of our first districts, cohort 1. They helped co-design this ship and has been amazing partner for the past 7 years. I'm going to sort of speed through some slides. I have about 15 minutes, so I want to make sure I can share some information with you guys, as well as there's some resources, slide deck, and things that might can help you as I go through this presentation. And so first and foremost, the Community Engagement Initiative is led in partnership with the CCEE, San Diego County Office of Education, Escolta School of Research and Design, and the University of San Diego School of Leadership and Education Sciences. And so on the next slide, short of what is Community Engagement Initiative, and as Christine talked about MTSS, and she mentioned community engagement, and community engagement lives in tons of places in the work we do and how we transform local communities. If you think about something as like CCSPP is the car, it's the vehicle we are using to try to transform our schools. Our families and our community members are the gasoline. They fill up the tank and make sure the car can make it to its destination. But something like CEI and MTSS, like the transmission fluid and the oil, you don't check it every day, but if it runs low or if it runs dry, the car can't get anywhere. And so, as Christine said, when your car is stuck in the mud or in ice or things, If the engine oil isn't right and the transmission fluid isn't right, you are not going to get unstuck. But if you have all your fluids filled and you have your gas tank full, you can make it over just about anywhere. And so when we think about the community engagement initiative, we are really built around sharing and leading and learning. And we use that through peer leading and learning networks where we bring together educational partners from across the state to really lean in and develop problems of practice, as Christine said, areas that they're stuck, and then using the tools and resources in the state system of support within that framework to move the work forward. And in particular, for community schools, it really is how are you building your CCSPP plans to meet your local needs? The California Community School Partnership, and Matt can speak to it, even in the same district, every school has different needs. Every school has different goals, different data point that they're trying to move. And so this is really about like bringing folks to the table in their local community to design something that meets their needs. And so we do that through various different things. Our peer leading and learning network, which is our flagship program, our peer leading and learning exchange, which are participants from prior network who facilitate and lead um, future networks, and then our peer leading and learning walk, where we allow people to go out into the field and see the work in real time. Sometimes you can talk about a project and the process as much as you want, but until you can see it, touch it, and live it, it doesn't make sense. And so providing opportunities for folks to go around the state and see that work. And then we offer communities of practice that are more in a virtual space just so we can have a broader reach and that are targeted and more focused. And so that's sort of the universe that CI lives in. And so on the next slide, we sort of talk about, well, what does that mean? And so we have a framework that is built around the dual capacity building framework, which is the work of Dr. Karen Mapp out of Harvard Graduate School, that talks to what folks were saying, the essential conditions you need to make partnership work, the challenges that historically exist, the policies and program goals and shifts that you have to make, and then the capacity outcomes that you hope to shift. And so at the center of our work are authentic partnerships, but we know that without those essential conditions in place, then the work doesn't take root. And so, with our aspiration of really addressing historical challenges and creating conditions for partnership, the actions around the outer circle of the icon are what we can do. And so, we use the venue of the peer leading and learning network, but in your space, it might be your CCSPP advisory group, it might be your DLAC, it might be your ELAC, might be whoever are partners that are coming to the table. And so on the next slide, what does that look like for CEI? Like, how does that work? Well, we have requirements for who needs to be on our team. And so when you are trying to really transform systems, as Christine said, it is fundamental that you build capacity of everyone in the room. And so when you're talking about collaborative leadership and you're talking about um, tying that directly to family and community engagement really is how do you have all of these educational partners in the room around the table, all receiving professional development, all receiving training and capacity building so that they can all collectively show up as equal partners in the work. And so in any of our CEI teams, you will see we have cabinet level leadership. We've learned that if you are making decisions void of cabinet level leadership, you might bring some wonderful change ideas back, but if you didn't have a cabinet member, it doesn't move. And so making sure you have higher level leadership in room, school site leadership, school site staff, folks at every level. And one thing that is relevant and true to the CCSPP work, community partnerships. Pandemic demonstrated, and prior to that, that community schools help to bring in community partners, knowing that LEAs can't do all the work and aren't charged with doing all the work. And so, how do you create deep partners that can help move the work forward? And then, most important in family and community engagement, our family caregivers and our students. And so, all of these voices and more come to the table to really drive the change work. And for folks with CCSPP grant, this sort of looks like a CPS advisory team, right? It's the same folks that we hope you have at the table as you're moving forward your CCSPP work. And so on the next slide, like, what does that look like? we have a 2-year learning journey. CEI is a 2-year commitment where these teams go together and we are teaching community members, parents, students, the fundamentals of improvement science, like really building folks' capacity around that. And it's through 7 meetings a year, virtual and in person. And you can see every session is connected to the areas of our framework, addressing the challenge, setting the conditions, connecting in community, gathering data, like community-friendly ways of really honing in. The first year is exploratory. What is it that we want to focus on? What is our problem with practice? Let's really spend a year collaboratively thinking about what it is. And then in that year 2, you move into implementation and testing out your change ideas. And then by the end of year 2, you have a sustainability plan to keep the work going once you're no longer in our network, but also the commitment from all of your educational partners to hold the system accountable to make sure that those changes are rooted in the community and that there's fidelity to implementation. And so, on the next slide, what does that mean for staff, parents, families? Based on our survey from RTI, we asked, on average, what did participants think about growing their knowledge? And we saw growth on all strategies. And so parents, caregivers, and community partners said they learned how to gather data on communities' experience, how to examine data and understand trends, how to map community strengths and assets, how to develop a problem of practice, how to brainstorm strategies. And so as you can see, when we talk about the dual capacity, what parents learn and then what staff learn, how to do empathy interviews, mapping community strengths and assets and resources, developing problem practice, developing aim statements, collaboratively developing change approaches, and developing action plans. And so when we think about CCSPP, this is the meat and the bones. You want both sides of the coin, in theory, the community partners and parents and caregivers and staff to have the same set of skills built and be able to communicate across experiences in education and educationese and all of that. And so in the CI world, bringing folks together, realizing and folks sharing like these are hard skills and soft skills that they've walked away with that they can use in their personal life and professional life and careers and beyond. And so on the next slide, you're like, what? But wait a minute, you said you had students in the room. And so we have developed a leadership pathway for students that is aligned once again to the elements, teaching age-appropriate ways of improvement science. And once again, students are key members of the team. They aren't accessories, they aren't decoration, they are key decision-making partners. And so how do we do that? Is by creating a student leadership pathway that once again is aligned to our elements, but also is teaching improvement science that's age appropriate. Well, we have 5th graders through 12th graders on our team. Teaching a 5th grader about improvement science is different than teaching a 12th grader and teaching a parent and teaching the staff. And so how do you make authentic spaces for youth to grow and build their capacity to be active team members as well as contribute? And so year 1 is exploratory, exploring their leadership journey. And then year 2, they move into campaigns and they build campaigns that highlight areas of growth in their community. And so what does that mean? On the next slide, students who have participated in CEI have said like 85% reported that their relationship with their team changed, leading them to feel closer, heard, and more comfortable. Our students have learned that everybody's voice matters, and now they use their voice. And so imagine we have events where there's 1,400 people in the room, and a 5th grade student will get up and share their idea in front of 1,500 people because they feel empowered, they feel like they're important, they feel like their voice is heard. And so when you're thinking of CCSPP, how are you truly leveraging the voices of the students and their lived experiences to be co-authors in their CCSPP journey? And so on the next slide, it's I could tell you about CI until I blew in the face, but here are some voices from folks in the field to say what the value is and what they gain from being part of CEI.
Can you hear that, Stephen?
I don't think you shared sound, Matt.
Oh, Lord.
Inspira, empowering, understand.
Ah,
You might have to leave, share, and reshare.
Yeah, yep.
I can hear it.
You can hear it?
Yeah, I could hear it.
Oh, perfect. Let's start again there.
The sound just cuts in and out.
It's because
Inspirada, phenomenal, empowering, understanding, engaging, magical, awesome, and exciting. Motivated. Exciting, empowering, empowered, refreshing, empoderado, empowered, aprendizaje, refinamiento, fun, enjoyable.
I think people are in a mode where it's like, I'm just in LCAP season. I did a parent survey, I did a student survey. Here are the results. It's like, there's so much more that we might be able to do. There's Harvard research that shows that one of the best indicators for whether a student's successful is the frequency of eating at a dinner table together as a family. Right. And so I think the temptation to get jaded a little bit and roll your eyes at things like community engagement and LCAP, and like, what if the thing that we're rolling our eyes about is the actual thing that is going to deliver on that California promise?
You have to build a capacity of folks at every single level, your student voices, your parent voices, the ability of your school site staff to listen.
Being part of CEI, the Community Engagement Initiative, reinforces that the work we do is not just head work, but hard work as well.
Inspired.
Delighted.
Family.
Impactful.
Courage to cause more disruption. Inspiring.
Fun. Powerful. Amazing. Empowering. Emocionante. Connecting family. Amazing. Energized. Amazing. Beautiful. Mucho amor. Thankful. Fantastic.
Empowered, inspired, excited, optimistic, all of those. I love it.
All right, thank you, Matt. And so, as you heard, empowered, emotional, inspired, all of the things of when you really bring in your educational partners to share and helping to dream a vision for the future and creating the conditions for them to truly engage and partner, it is transformative. And so, I think, Matt, I might have some time for questions. I'm not sure.
I think we do. I think I'd ask you though, just take a minute as you think about all of your work with CEI. What's the natural talk just about the hand in glove in terms of community schools and CEI?
Most definitely. And so, community engagement is a pillar of community schools. And, we like to say it's one of the pillars that is usually out of the realm of educational training. Like you can learn to be a curriculum lead through a credential program. You can learn to be a site leader, but learning to engage your community as true partners is not historically in the process of becoming an educator or becoming a leader. But the sort of handoff, and Anaheim is a perfect example of they were part of CEI and had been doing community schools work before community schools was even called community schools, but they were able to leverage the power of their community when they did receive the CCSPP grant to be ahead of the curve and really design something that met the needs of all of their school sites. And it's because they had a pulse on their community. They had a relationship with their community. They had parents who were leading committees, parents who were volunteering, students who were leading, all of these voices that trusted in the system and felt invested in the system and felt a part of the system. And so when you're thinking about CCSPP, for this work to stick beyond the funding, it has to become part of the DNA of your system. It has to be that motor oil, that transmission fluid. It can't be the decal or the bumper sticker or something like that because you might have a lot of bumper stickers on your car, but if there's no fluid in it, it's not going anywhere. And so really investing in the capacity building and really leaning into the power of trusting that your community has the answers. They might need your help, they might need your guidance, but they have the answers. And once you prove to them once that their answers are valid and are making sense and improving the system, that's when the true transformation happens, and their ideas will just flood in and rain in. And so when you're thinking about CCSPP, do you have a space? Have you created the opportunity for people to provide you input and feedback? And then what actions are you going to take when you do receive that input and feedback? And that is the fundamental, like, back and flow, two-way communication flow of community engagement and CCSPP. Because every year when you are redeveloping plans or you're rethinking it, you have to engage your community, and they have to have a system that their thoughts, concerns can be received, but then you also have to have a system so that you can communicate back to them that you heard them. And if you can do it, great. If you can't, not so great sometimes, but also if you have the trusting relationship and they know that you have them, the families and the students' best interests at heart, those difficult decisions are slightly less difficult because everyone understands that your North Star is headed in a direction that is going to improve outcomes for all students.
I love that, Stephen. I think one of the things I would share, just in the context of the work that we're doing with folks here in Central Coast, but also in our partnership with the Bay Area RTech and our informal partnerships with the South Coast and Southern Inland, community engagement and specifically family community partnership is in some ways one of the weaker pillars. And in part because it usually gets defined as something you do at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year, not something the way that you laid it out in terms of the ongoing. It's something that that is the FACES, the family and community engagement specialist responsibility, not the whole system's responsibility. That's the kind of implementation we see. And I know from the folks in the Central Coast, I mean, again, it's foundational, steps 1 and 2. You don't even get on to the other stuff until you really get this piece established. Now, Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm hoping I'm right on this. That is cohort 7. Is that RFP closed already, or is it still open?
You have a little bit over 48 hours. Cohort 7's RFA closes Friday at 5 p.m. And so we would encourage you, if you haven't already participated in one of our prior networks, to please consider submitting an application. I will say, of all of the projects that you've ever participated in, the barrier to entry is relatively low for CEI. It really is capped at, we're bringing in 60 LEAs, and to submit a response, the RFA is on our website. But it's a one-page letter saying what you hope to gain, what have you tried, and what you look forward to if you were to be selected. And so you have 48 hours to get your superintendent's signature. And we would love, based on space and capacity, to see more representation from Central Coast. And something that we share in CI, it's a leading and learning network. And so we're always looking to understand the narrative of different parts of California. Every part of our state is so unique, from greater LA Metro to the Southern Inland to Capital to North State. And unfortunately or fortunately, with this opportunity, Central Coast voices haven't been represented. It's been hard to gain traction in the Central Coast, and through our partnership with Salinas Junior High and Pajaro Valley, we learned so much about what it means to be a California resident in the Central Coast, and we're looking to learn even more. And so please encourage folks from that part of the state to really come and teach us so that we can best share your story and your experiences and your expertise with the rest of the state to make the entire state just that much more powerful.
That's awesome. Any questions on that? I was struck by one page, a one-page letter. That's a relatively low bar to be able to at least get your name in the hat. So Don, I see you got on screen, so I'm assuming you want to ask a question.
Well, I just wanted to say we also have the LSL school district that's represented.
Yes, I forgot. You guys are cohort.
And King City, right? So King City Union.
Yes, and we also had the
or Unified School Union School District. Yeah.
And we had Live Oak in Santa Clara, Santa Cruz County. So my apologies. I'm thinking
it's all right.
Historical.
I'm like, wait a minute, we have more than that.
That's I really didn't mind it very much. Thanks for mentioning PVUSD, Steve.
Yeah. Hi, Alicia.
Hello, Dr. Smith.
That's awesome. And I would really encourage folks, if you've not been a part of a cohort, we know all kinds of friends and colleagues across the state that have, and it absolutely is a critical feature of community schools. And there's no better place to be trained up and to be learning from each other and those that have come before than through the CEI network and the work that Stephen is led for years.
Yeah, and a lot of feedback we get from people who are CEI and CCSPP is that at first it feels like there's two separate bodies of work. Like we're doing CEI and we're doing CCSPP. And then they have this aha moment, like actually the CEI work is enforcing and informing our CCSPP work. And it's this moment where the glove fits and they realize like it pushes the trajectory of their work and speeds it up because of the intentionality of building that muscle that, as Matt said, a lot of people just don't get to exercise it. And so it truly, truly complements, supplements, and supports CCSPP in a way that many of the CCSPP recipients who are CEI report gains. And, we were proud that what was it, the sites that they picked, the demonstration sites? I can't remember what their name were, but
demonstration sites.
At least 75% of them were CEI because of that relationship. So
very good. Any other questions for Stephen? You better speak now or forever hold your peace, because again, I have wait time.
Is that Gina from down in Ventura?
Yes.
Oh, Miss Gina. See now, Miss Gina.
Yes.
You're a facilitator.
Yes.
In 30 seconds, what does CEI meant for you and your CCSPP?
Well, it's just an alignment. That's what I love, the crosswalk you created. It's so amazing because what it does, it just really does marry everything together. Like I say, our CEI journey began our CS before our community schools program. So it's been a foundation has been our CEI, like the work that we did as really looking at root analysis and things and then now with our community schools, it just became like a holistic approach. So it's been amazing. So love it.
Thank you, Miss Gina. You had your camera off. I didn't realize that was you.
All right. Well, thank you, Stephen. I've got a little bit more. If folks can give me about 10 more minutes, because we're gonna look at kind of how, as you marry all of these things, kind of the impact from a systemic perspective. So, Stephen, thank you so much for taking the time today. So appreciate you.
Thank you all. I appreciate the work you guys are doing. And once again, lean into CEI and community engagement as you continue on your CCSPP journey. They definitely complement and supplement each other in a way that's super valuable.
Awesome.
All right. Have a good rest of your day.
All right. Thanks, Stephen. All right. And I do know it's that time of year, so I'm gonna just, I felt like it was an important and in some ways timely to bring Christine and the California MTSS and the portrait work that's happening at the legislative level, and then obviously CEI, because we see this too often, honestly. And when I say that, I'm not generalizing to the Central Coast. I'm talking about everywhere we're working, where at the site level, you have folks that think of, CEI is different than CCSPP, or where does MTSS fit in? And that's another thing. I mean, you go down the list of the different initiatives that hit at all different levels. our approach, and the approach as we've worked with you, and again with my partner in crime, Manuel Colon, has worked with you, is really to bake it into the actual system. And I want to show you just two examples. It kind of goes back to this framing of this idea of the four pillars and then the component parts. This is a typical response to chronic absenteeism in a non-community school, a non-systemic approach, which is you've got an attendance team that's really looking to do a deep dive. They often will engage with family and potentially communities, but certainly family, and try to identify the root cause and identify how to mitigate the challenges that are getting in the way of kids being able to show up regularly to school, often pulling in other different types of student supports. And I'm going to pick straight up on secondary. This is usually the response, and it's not effective, because to really get after chronic absenteeism, there has to be a shared set of values and beliefs that's held by the community, that being at school regularly is not only good for you, but it's good for all of us. We like to say leveraging the power of the collective, and that there is an expectation that is held that we're going to be together. Now, part of that is driven, and this gets into the shared purpose, shared vision for readiness. Kids, families, staff, community members all need to feel, but especially kids, a sense of belonging and connection. And if you're familiar with the work at the school level that we've been doing with you all on Central Coast, part of shared purpose is a statement around you're committed to every kid feeling a sense of belonging and connection. Now, those two things are critical. So, we can have a kid who's chronically absent, but you can't just address it like in where that symptom is. You got to be thinking about, okay, are we as a community setting the conditions for belonging and connection to be elevated, and to be part of it? Now, you just kind of roll this through. The biggest part, and this gets into stuff Christine was talking about, and I'll take a quick detour. When you talk about a graduate portrait, we would argue and we would encourage, and we can support you in ensuring that you're actually building one that leverages the assets that historically marginalized kids are bringing in to the classroom every day. This happens through instructional design. And so while we are encouraging folks to build out a holistic shared vision for readiness, and now there's going to be essentially a requirement at the state level for that, the universal practices should align with that. And I'll give you this a very real example. I don't think I've shared this with you, and my daughter gives me permission. I've got a daughter who's 23. She's just went into a sober living facility after being in residential treatment. She dropped out of school when she was 16. Her mom's a special ed teacher on special assignment at the district level, supporting special ed teachers. I do what I do, and was large high school principal assistant suit. My daughter has a specific disability in math. And the reason I'm bringing this up is she'd been in Anaheim, and I'm using Anaheim as the example just because I know their graduate portrait is the 5 C's. It's classic 4 C's: ability to collaborate, communicate, be creative, think critically, and care is their 5th one. I've got 4 kids. Ella, my daughter, she is top drawer of my 4 kids. She is absolutely at the top as a collaborator, communicator, and care. And yet when she was in the system, and her parents, myself included, were complicit in pushing her out of the system, it had to do with the fact that she had a specific disability in math. Had she shown up every day, and part of the instructional design was in developing kids' capacity to care, developing kids' capacity to communicate and collaborate, if that was part of the instructional design like it is in Anaheim, my daughter would not have become ultimately chronically absent, and then from there, a high school dropout at 16. Wouldn't have happened. And I won't get into that. That's another story for a whole nother day. But in terms of how, as a parent, I was complicit in it, I'm just the power in a holistic vision for readiness for marginalized groups of students is huge if it gets baked into the universal practices. And so this is where you can see all of these different components light up. And with the work that we've been doing with you all, the statements of the ideal that people have been reflecting on at the site levels, they're all interconnected. So it's not about having the 4 pillars. It's really about how these 4 pillars actually come together and interconnect. So that's a systemic response. Similar with low academic achievement. Often, certainly at the elementary level, there's probably a little bit more or a lot more family community partnership. At secondary level, it's primarily student supports and then trying to figure out how do we individualize. When you think about it in the context of a systemic response, just like I mentioned with my daughter, Ella, we wouldn't make, and this gets a little bit into equitable access programmatically and individually, we wouldn't have made decisions. She was in a high school, had a 5-period day. So we chose to have her double dosed in math because we were chasing the holy grail of math and her getting in Oregon, they call it a regular diploma, which in and of itself is horrible because my daughter's not irregular, but it's a whole nother conversation. The idea with this idea of equitable access and program, this idea of vision for readiness, she was systematically, because of that push for double dosing from kind of a classic RTI framing, she was systematically excluded from being in the choir, systematically excluded from being in a career pathway connected to kind of the areas that she wants to work with, early childhood education and or elder care, where her 3 top drawer attributes, ability to collaborate, ability to communicate, and her genuine heart and care for others would have actually shown up, and she would have felt like, yeah, I've got math's hard, but at least I got choir today. Math's hard, but at least I'm going to something that I can see my future in. She got none of that. And within 2 years, she was out. That's where these things all start to fold together. And so what, our work with you all on the Central Coast and as we kind of continue over the next several years, not just the Central Coast and elsewhere, we're very, very passionate about helping people build systems that the interconnections pull the 4 pillars together and work off of each other. And so with that, I'll take any questions. We'll get done a little bit early. I know you got nothing else to do, but so appreciate your all's time today. Questions, thoughts? Let's just hit stop and get on with I'd love to say our weekend, but at least our Wednesday. All right. I'm not hearing any. Oh,
I just wanted to just maybe uplift or just highlight the critical component of really having that sense of belonging for all students and to try to be able to find ways to be able to support all students. Because I think in the work that we do, like with CI, I get CI, I love that because it really talks about using parents as a strategy, not a goal.
Yeah.
Right? Because if we have our parents working with us, then, it'll be easier, right? And then we really can see success. So just really the importance of that sense of belonging that I don't think a lot of administrators or even board members truly understand that need, because if students don't feel like they belong, they're not going to come to school, then we won't be able to educate them. And to then really be able to think about how we're going to really change the way we're educating our children. And a lot of times it feels like we're at an uphill battle, right? To try to make those changes, because the people that can make those changes we have to find ways to help them see what we see. And I think sometimes that's a big challenge, but, because I hear your story and thank you for sharing about your daughter. We have so many of our students that happens to them because we're not responding in the appropriate way to support all kids.
I appreciate that, Gina. And this is why from a secondary, I was a large comprehensive high school principal. If I was principal right now and I was assistant soup, if I were in those roles today, I would encourage belonging, connection, and engagement as 3 outcomes that are the first 3 outcomes on a syllabus. And equally, and I would argue because of their placement as the first 3, more important. And they're truly outcomes, right? You're saying to kids in the syllabus that you have a responsibility to ensure all of us feel like we are accepted for who we are in this space, aka belonging. All of you have, and all of us have a responsibility for kids feeling a sense of being cared for and caring for others, aka connection. Those are things that actually should be elevated to that level. In fact, we actually have a survey that we encourage people to use. It's 5 questions. It was built against the California Healthy Kids Survey around engagement. It's very, very simple. But we pulled apart the constructs of belonging, connection, and engagement, because in the California Healthy Kids, it's all folded together. And it's about 15 questions. It takes like 7 minutes, and we encourage people to do it at 3 different points in the year because it's that important. Those are the leading indicators.
Could you share that with us?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's totally open sourced and all that kind of stuff. So I'll make sure that we get it to you guys, get it pushed out to you. The other thing, if you're interested in the slide deck, because I know there's some, I'll push the slide deck to you also. Cool. All right. Thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.